All right, everybody, let's go ahead and just get started a little bit early here, just because I wanted to talk about this interesting table. Well, I at least find it interesting and fascinating. This is the, uh, if you kind of explode, you know how there's that like podcast song exploder that like takes all the different parts of a song, right? Similar kind of thing here. If you explode the unemployment rate, you can look at it in alternate measures, right? So for the most part, we have a official unemployment. Well, not for the most part. We absolutely do have an official unemployment rate. This is our U3. But there are 6 different measures of unemployment. So if we start to include those discouraged workers, right? So remember from chapter 8, we talked about unemployed peoples and how they had to be actively looking for a job, right? And so total unemployed plus those discouraged workers who maybe want a job but have given up because they haven't found any job suitable to their skills. So if you look at that, there's not really too much of a gap there, right? And that in and of itself tells us something. During the Great Recession and during the long and slow recovery that happened out of the Great Recession, the 2008 financial crisis, we had an unemployment rate that was points different from our unemployment plus discouraged worker rate. So the fact that these are close together is showing us that, there's not a lot of discouraged workers. Well, then we start to talk about what if we look at other people marginally attached to the labor force, right? And the nice thing with these government graphs is that anytime they use these kind of jargony terms, we can usually go into the footnote and it'll explain it to us, right? So persons marginally attached to the labor force are those who are neither working or looking, but indicate they want and are available for a job and have looked sometime in the past 12 months. So that's what it means to be marginally attached to the labor force. So if we add discouraged workers and marginal attached workers, now it starts to be a little bit different than our official unemployment rate, right? Instead of being 3.6, which is what it was last month, it's 4.3. Not a ton of difference, but enough to make note of. And then our most kind of zoomed out or our most comprehensive, if you will, measure of unemployment, if we add the discouraged workers, the marginally attached workers, and the people that are involuntarily part-time. There are going to be some people that are working part-time, but they might want a full-time job. And so those people are counted in this U6 measure. And here's where we really start to see a jump, right? It's a 3-point jump from 3.6% with the official unemployment rate to 6.8%, which is the unemployment rate once we include discouraged workers, marginally attached workers, and part-time workers. So despite the fact that in the news we are given pretty much 2 numbers for jobs and employment, right? We're given the amount of jobs that were added that month, and there's usually some sort of economic estimate about the number of jobs added. So really, it's that whole piece of economic evidence is really just like, was it more or less or around the amount of jobs that were predicted, right? If it's less than the amount of jobs predicted, then the markets panic a little bit. If it's more than the amount of jobs predicted, then that's a good thing, and the markets usually do well, right? The equity markets, the stock markets react well. When is a circumstance when higher? So right now, to not lead with a question, right now is a circumstance where yes, we want to see steady job growth in terms of so many jobs created a month, but because of the fact that inflation has been a concern, right? And the recent numbers came out today and showed that it's at its lowest level in 2 years, so that's great. That's great news for us. But in a typical kind of situation where we are in an atypical situation where we're worried about inflation, so we would be careful about an overheating labor market. So if there were, let's say, 200,000 jobs predicted, but it came in at 400,000 jobs, that might actually shake the market because the market would think, oh crap, there's going to be more inflation because of the fact that the labor market isn't cooling down, so to speak. So again, we have this unemployment measure, and then we have the number of jobs added every month measure. Those are the 2 main measures that are reported in the news. But because we've taken this class and because we can do a little Google search and find this table, this alternate measures, we can get a more robust look at what's going on in the labor market rather than just looking at that one data point. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, cool. Not something that's going to be on your test at all, but just something that I think is important just as citizens and news consumers and stuff like that, right? The fact that, and that's the reason why, so during your life, you're going to live through some sort of recession or depression, right? It's just inevitable. And so this number, this official unemployment rate, is usually understating how bad the employment market is at the time. And that's part of what I'm trying to show you here, is that it's understating it because it's explicitly discounting these people that we would think would be counted as unemployed, right? Discouraged workers, marginally attached workers, involuntarily part-time workers. So once we take a look at those, then it starts to become more realistic and kind of feels more appropriate or more reflective of people's actual economic situation or economic reality, right? So one of the things that happened in the Great Recession was, the U3 rate, right, was very low. It wasn't very low, but it wasn't as low as the U6 rate. And we were feeling that U6 rate. You know what I mean? Like everybody was feeling like a lot of people were getting laid off. It was very difficult for people to get jobs. And so as a result, there was a lot of disbelief in the government statistics, right? The government says the unemployment rate's only 7%. Well, then how come, 7 out of my 10 friends are unemployed right now or something like that, right? And that's because of the fact that those people might be in the discouraged workers or the marginally attached workforce category. Okay,